Jesse, you had an amazing story that you put on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, and it's kind of inspired. I was talking to Rich about it because we do like a podcast on our channel, and I was thinking of asking you on to talk about the story, and kind of Rich came up with this brilliant idea. It was called The Awakening Now, and it's basically, Rich, do you want to explain it?
Basically, it's I want to get stories off people about their journeys, about where they are, sort of their journey to where they are now, through any sort of background, or, through a spiritual one. But it's like I've spoke to quite a few people, and their stories are really inspiring, and I think it's something that people don't get the chance to listen to. And like these stories inspire myself, and they inspire people. So I thought maybe we could try and get this across on the channel and get your people's stories. So that was sort of like basically the crux of it, was to hear about what their journey to what takes a person from that point to be in this point in the way they see the world.
I think it's great, and I think the stories are absolutely what people connect with. I know in my journeys, and as Jared knows, it's been ongoing for several years, there's been these big chunks of pieces, and even a friend of mine said, if I could just follow you around and record your life.
Yeah.
Because he says your life has got all these unbelievable things that are always happening within it, and it's inspiring. And I've had a lot of shamans, I've had a lot of other spiritual workers and readers and all kinds of people come to me and say, I thought my life was hard until I started hearing what you go through and what you've been dealing with in your life and your journey.
Yeah.
And you're one of those people that can truly understand. You're one of those people that inspire me, because the challenges you've faced are beyond what I'm facing. And I'm so glad that when Jared came to me and he says your story has been an inspiration for this show to come about, that was really exciting to me to get that feedback, from him, from other people saying, this journey, I realize it's hard for you, but it's helping me. And I think hearing that from people was a really huge turning point, because there are so many components there that we don't think about when we're going through those challenges. We're thinking about what we're having to deal with. I know I was under extreme circumstances the last few months, and as a result of that, I had a lot of people that said, I wish I could have done something to help you. I felt so helpless and so powerless in this situation because I care so much, but I'm in another country, or I don't have the resources to send you, or this or that, and it's breaking my heart. And then there's the other people that said, I've been facing these tough times, and watching you go through this journey turned my life around. And I don't think there's anything that can compare with that. And when you're faced with these hard times and you're so absorbed by the experience that you're going through, to have somebody let you know that is just huge. It's just huge.
Yeah. Well, I just noticed, I kind of shocked me that you've got an American accent. So are you actually in America now, or?
Yes.
Whoa. Whoa. The power of the internet is amazing. I thought he was in the UK or something. I didn't realise.
No. Jesse was originally, I interviewed Jesse back in 2015 for Worlds Beyond, when I was doing on the radio.
Yeah.
I interviewed Jesse back in 2015 for Worlds Beyond, and I've kind of she runs a group on Facebook, and I've kind of just kept an eye on your videos and your travels over the last 2 years. I know we haven't sort of spoke much, but when I seen what you'd been through on that video, it just kind of inspired me, and we started chatting about it. But yeah, Jesse, you've actually travelled around quite a lot of America, haven't you, Jesse, over the last couple of years?
I did, and Jared, when we last connected with the other show, I was at a point that I was facing some pretty rough times at that point as well, but nothing, of course, like what I've been through the last 3 months. At that time, I was traveling the U.S. I had already made one trip around the U.S. and was getting ready to start on my second trip around, touring with my own work in kind of spiritual workshops and helping people get inspired in their life, helping them get past the challenges in their life. I had 2 books published on compassion, 2 books published on relationships at that point. Since that time, I put out another book, which actually came about from that trip around the U.S. And those that did follow my story, like yourself, you realize that prior to starting the first trip around the United States, when I got ready to go, I rescued a cat from going over a waterfall. And that cat journeyed with me all around the U.S. She did full-day hikes with me. She was everywhere that I went with me. And everybody looked at us. She had this light, and everybody said, the two of you, I mean, you're soulmates. Like, they could tell the connection. They could tell the unity there. Yeah. And there was no question. We would have people that were in these biker gangs that would stop, and they would hold up the whole biker gang just to get a photo with her. She was that amazing. And people that we would meet on the trails, and they're just like, I can't believe you're walking a cat on a hiking trail, and that she's out, on this full day hike with you. So anyway, she was the inspiration behind a lot of the work. And I'm kind of doing this because this is a lead up to what brought me into Maine, the state of Maine, and this whole journey I've been through over the winter. And she actually ended up passing away in 2015 because she was about 13 years old when I first rescued her. So she was with me for 11 months, and it was during the time that I was reflecting on our time together that this entire way of understanding the world unfolded to me. What I realized that she was not only like a life partner for me, she was teaching me. Yeah. She was teaching me this entire way of understanding the world, how people interact, how they function, the whole works, which I call codes, which is this pattern that we function on. And that actually led to this really cool little book I'm going to show you. Artwork was done by my niece. It's called The Code Journey. And it's done very similar to some of the big astrology books out there. But this whole way of understanding the world has allowed me to share with people how to maneuver in this world, how to work past the challenges, how to be prepared for some of the challenges, how to deal with those rough spots that are coming up. And so that's taken me on a huge journey, because right after she passed and this whole system started unfolding, it was like everything crashed in my life. I had venues I would show up to, and they said, well, we decided to close the shop the day before. I had other venues I showed up to, and they said, well, we decided to sell the shop, and so we didn't have time to market your event. So when you get into that, you're thinking to yourself, wow, what is this about? So I landed in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is in the middle of the United States, for a while, where I had my address based. And as the system continued to unfold, I used it to help me maneuver my circumstances. And it eventually led me about a year ago down into the Indianapolis area. And while I was down in Indianapolis, I kind of knew what I was getting into, but I was thinking, okay, this is one of the better, kind of the outskirts of Indianapolis would be fairly well coded form, should be fairly solid, and it was coded well enough to create that book, which was great. But there were some other challenges and pieces I was still understanding along the way. And as I understood those pieces, I realized that I could live in Maine as easily as I could live in Indiana. And in my journey, I live out of my vehicle while I'm traveling, because spending money on hotels all the time is very expensive. And
Yeah, of course.
you'd have to have a huge budget to do that with. So I had my vehicle completely set up where I could live out of it. And when I was originally thinking, well, I'll go up to Canada because I was very drawn to Canada, but then I got very ill about a year ago, and I had to use all the money that I had set aside for work visas and things like that towards surviving. And so when I got this realization that, okay, I can have basically the same code pattern, but a little bit better influences in Maine than I can in Indiana, it was no question to me to go to Maine. Yeah. And so I've been following this journey of wisdom along the way. And I think what shocked a lot of people, Jared, as you saw in that video I put out in December, is that we oftentimes expect when we step into a path of wisdom that it's going to be super smooth. But what people forget about is there's a whole lot of throwing off. There's a whole lot of adjustment that has to go on between stepping into alignment and living in alignment, if you want to say that. So,
yes, well, could I just ask? So, what is it? Because what is it you actually do, if you don't mind me asking? Because I'm a bit.
So, what I do is I actually look at how a person, a place, a thing functions, what its basic energy pattern is, the program that it runs on. Right. And then I can also look at the interaction. So I can tell, for example, if a particular location will be favorable or unfavorable, will bring a person better into alignment or throw them more out of alignment. I can look at two people will fit together in a relationship, or if they're choosing to be together, what their challenges might be in that relationship, based on the way their codes and their programmings are interacting. And there's many different layers to that, which incorporates over 50 different fields, practices, belief systems, and things like this. So this has actually allowed me to say, for example, okay, if I move to one place, this is the type of energy I'm going to deal with. If I move to another place, everything has its own energy, but then how it interacts with a given individual is a whole different piece and layer to it.
So can I ask? Obviously, of my understanding of America, right, with like it's quite a religious sort of based background. And did you find that a struggle with dealing with with having this sort of thing and going across the country and trying to sort of like not sell the idea, but trying to promote the idea that this is something you do and this is something that benefits people? How did you find that on a spiritual sense?
I think that there are a lot of spiritual people here as well, but there are certainly areas like in the middle of the United States that still have a very strong religious base there. Yeah. And so you have to be a little bit careful. I think it's a fine balance between finding and being yourself and being open with your work, and then
so also, did you find you had to be a bit cautious? Did you, in sort of certain areas, you had to sort of like physically think about what you were sort of like, how you would approach the subject?
Definitely. And I think if you're in, say, Los Angeles area or San Francisco area in California, you've got a much more open spiritual base to work with. But when you get into a place, say like Sioux Falls, South Dakota, you might have one yoga studio. It's not considered a big spiritual hub there per se. You get a little more over to the Black Mountains, you've got a little bit more openness there, but you do shift your approach. And I think it's kind of like, Richard, when you're talking with people from different countries. you're going to approach things a little bit differently because of their base, what is appropriate to their culture. And I think it's no different in these different sections. You learn to shift the terminology. You might say spirit around a group of spiritually based people, but you might use God in the middle of the country in a more religiously based group of people.
Do you find that people on this journey, obviously you've been doing this for a long time, I should imagine. Do you find people are more spiritual now? Or is it sort of like, would you say it's going one way or the other?
I think that a lot of people are trying to get away from the terms. And the reason I think that is, I think for a long time, a lot of people wanted to align with spiritual when they wanted to have a non-denominational foundation to work from. But now what I'm finding is because there's so many people and spirituality has become a fad, and there's so many people that, we used to call them the Sedona people for a long time, because the Sedona people were the people that weren't always doing well in other places, and they went to Sedona to find themselves charged high prices and may or may not have provided. And there's some very legitimate people in Sedona. I lived in Arizona for a while, but there's also a lot of people who are much more commercially based with their spirituality.
In the UK, then very similar to Glastonbury, you had obviously you still got good people in Glastonbury because of the culture and because of the way Glastonbury has been portrayed, probably on the world stage. It is like commercialism now gone mad as far as spirituality is concerned.
So there's a whole movement now away from some of that terminology, so that people are trying to break more into something that's authentic than that commercial association, that pat formula of marketing themselves.
That is what people are looking for, and I think that is something that we've sort of come up against as well, is that people are looking for authenticity now. They're looking for something. I think they sort of come away, a lot of people who at least got an interest in maybe spiritual, the paranormal, esoteric, they've seen certain things, so they kind of got, and you find the mainstream is still asking or arguing the same questions that it pretty much always has for as long as there's been television or radio. But a lot of people, I think this is why a lot of people are turning, when they actually browsing the web for answers, they are looking for authenticity. They want authenticity from people.
They want to find something they connect with, don't they? They want to find something.
Yeah. Or someone.
Or someone that's like sits in resonance with themselves. Something they don't, like you said, you said it really well. It's a label, and they want to sort of like steer from that label. Don't we? I mean, we all want to steer from a label, and that's why I asked that question, because I wanted to see if that's, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for people to steer from a label, because it's labels that cause, in my thoughts, labels cause conflicts and cause divides.
I agree with you on that. And when we get into labels, and it becomes a very fine line between trying to share and describe something that we do and putting a label on it. And it can definitely go either way. And so many times what happens is, as soon as that label gets on it, and you're labeled as a reader or new age or spiritual advisor or whatever it is, that you kind of hit that point where people start to make judgments.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, you're a reader. Oh, you're that. And it's like, well, no, I'm not really a reader, but that's kind of what they're calling it here.
Yeah.
And so I think, yes, that authenticity is the thing. Somebody wants to not just hear the perfect story anymore, that, oh, I stepped on the spiritual path and now my life is all glory. I think that question is a huge one now, because so many people are starting to move into this authenticity. They're starting to step into a way of being that is aligned with universal principles. And they're wondering, if I'm stepping into this alignment, why are these challenges hitting me? And this is really starting to separate out a lot of the people who are in these practices, who are teaching, who are sharing their work, because it's really starting to sort out who's walking their talk and who isn't.
Do you want to tell us the story then? That what happened to you? What actually sort of inspired all of this?
Yeah, no, I'm busting to hear it.
I am. It's been about a couple of weeks now since I saw the video, and it would be nice just to hear sort of firsthand actually what happened, because it's one hell of a story.
I'm so grateful it's you that I'm doing this with. Okay, so as I realized that I could be in Maine instead of Indiana and not deal with any worse influences than I was dealing with in Indiana, I said, this is really, doesn't seem like it's a question of where I need to be, because Maine is such a incredibly beautiful state in the Northeast. Beautiful four-season outdoor kind of land, lots of trees, and borders the edge of Canada, which is favorable influences for me. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to take a little vacation time and I'm going to go explore Maine, just to make sure that I feel it's a place I could be. Make sure that I'm connecting with the people, check out the different areas around the state. And so it was, I was leaning in that direction to do it. And just before I had to come, and I had my time allotted to come out and visit Maine, I really had this day that I wasn't feeling real good. It was around Memorial Day weekend here in the United States, Labor Day weekend in the United States. It was the beginning of September. And I had a chunk of my tooth fall out, and that led me to have to go in and, long story short, went into $13,000 of dental work. So even though I had a place to live, I had a little room that I was renting in the Indiana area, I had to give up that place and go back into my vehicle because I had to pay those medical bills. And I had no coverage for them whatsoever. And I kept saying, okay, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I'm going to go visit Maine and we'll see where that leads me. And I'm trying to stay positive in all of this. And I get out here to Maine and it is beyond amazing. It is beyond what I could imagine. The people were so nice, and the towns had this sort of, if you want to say, hallmark aspect to them. Everybody was friendly. Everybody was kind. The conversations were amazing. It's a more conscious lifestyle, all of these things. And the beauty was just, when I came here, I was like, this feels like home. And as I was talking with people, they said, you have to come here and you have to come here now. By the time I heard that 6 or 7 times from people, I kind of took that as a sign. And I said, well, I guess I'm going to take that leap now, pretty much. And I started setting myself up knowing that the winters get cold in Maine. And when I was in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I was in my vehicle, I had already been through minus 30, minus 40 degree temps in the vehicle. So I knew it was possible to deal with harsh conditions. I knew I could deal with the cold factor here. And I knew that there would be a couple of times I would probably have to get a hotel room or something if a really big nor'easter came in and they were expecting, say, 1.5 feet of snow or something like that. And so I was prepared for all of those things, knowing what I was getting into as I came here late fall. And I worked everything out to come here in mid-November, and I've been maintaining ever since around the summer of 2015. I had been maintaining a full job, and I was able to transfer with that full job in addition to maintaining all of my own work in the process. So I had an income coming in. It wasn't like I was totally without an income. And I started this new beginning. I came here on my birthday, which is my new personal year. And in the aspect of codes and the work that I do, I entered a personal year on November 13th that was all about transformation. Pretty much I'm going to transform or I'm going to die. It's one of those big transformation things, and lots of endings and lots of closure to old things. And so I knew I was coming into a rough year and a kind of rough season. And so I embraced that. And I said, I've been through a lot of stuff. This is just one more thing. It's not going to be that big of a deal. And then everything was going good here. I was receiving a lot of recognition for my work, and I was connecting with people, and I was like, I just really like it here. I really like the flow here, and I feel really at peace here, and still mentally gearing for the winter season. And it was on December 11th that there was this little spot that I would go to in the evenings, and I would sit there and just unwind from my day, and I would connect with Orly, who was the cat that was the inspiration of my work, and I would just sit there and converse with her. Her being on the other side and me in the earth, and sitting by this nice lake and beautiful view and the moonlight coming down and all those things. Well, this one night that I was headed out there and I was getting ready to make a left-hand turn and took my foot off the brake because I had to wait for somebody to pass, and somebody came up behind me and they decided their cell phone was more important than watching the road, and didn't try to brake or swerve or anything, and hit me doing about 45 to 50 miles per hour.
Whoa.
Sent my car spinning in the road, and I don't even know what happened. I know that my head was hurting, but I didn't even begin to fathom the injuries that I had sustained at that point. I got out of the vehicle. I was walking around. It was, people were zooming by. Nobody was slowing down. The police showed up, and the police officer says to me, well, I've never seen anybody stand, let alone walk, after being hit the way you were hit. And I've seen hundreds of accidents here. And I thought, well, that's great. This is about the third time that I've been told there's no reason for you to be standing alive, things like that. And that's what the dentist had told me back in September. He said, really, with what's happening in your mouth, you shouldn't be alive right now. And I was just so dazed and stunned. I think at that point, I didn't even know what to do. The whole back end of my vehicle, I have one of these little mini cargo vans, and the whole back end of my vehicle was smashed in. There were holes in the door. It's amazing that I could even drive it at that point. And the irony in all of these journeys, my crystals were never damaged. My healing tools were never damaged. My singing bowls were never damaged. My computer, which was sitting at the back of my vehicle, it took me over 2 weeks to even access my computer because I couldn't get anything out, because the whole passenger side of my vehicle had been damaged. So I couldn't open the side doors. I couldn't open the back doors. Had no idea what I was going to do because I didn't have enough money for rent. How was I going to pay for anything else in a situation like this? So here I am now in December, where at that point the temps were dropping down into the teens, say, at night. At that point, we hadn't hit the coldest part of winter. And now the heat isn't functioning. The whole back end of the vehicle is opened up so you can feel the air coming into it. And there's, my means for staying warm were pretty much taken away. Basically, my base of home was taken away. It wasn't just being in a vehicle accident at that point. I'll take a breather there and let you comment if there's something you want to say in there.
And I think a lot of people are finding this, maybe not up to the level of what you are finding yourself, or of what you went through, but it is this is kind of a sign of the times, isn't it? People are just getting tested, and it's like, when you feel it couldn't get much worse, it kind of does. And I can't imagine sort of how you must have felt at that point, because, as you said, it felt. I think you said this earlier, but you had the sense of things sort of coming down, a sense of transition, and people think when you're on this sort of journey, that you go through it quite easily. It's not. It's heavily destructive, and I think you had from what you're telling me, it seems like you had a very poignant demonstration of that. So, what happened next, if you don't mind me asking? Unless, Rich, do you want to chime in with anything?
Well, I mean, just the fact that you were living in the means you were living. I mean, I've always been a firm believer in the fact that we are set upon a journey, and that journey defines us. And I mean, to go through these things, I mean, like you said with the dentist, obviously there was something wrong there, and it wasn't just your vehicle, it wasn't just a road accident, it was your home basically was, destroyed. It's just, I mean, yes, it's hard to get your head around. I mean, it sounds bizarre and it sounds too much, but I think sometimes things like that are necessary for us to become the people we become, because we'll come across people that will be in a very similar situation, and if we can't empathize and we can't have any understanding of what they're going through, we can't really help them. And as dramatic as Jess, as what you've just said you've gone through, which it is, it's no getting out of it, it is. Obviously, this, I believe somewhere someone could see that you had the strength to go through that. Well, and obviously, I know there's more to the story, but it's just. It just fascinates me the people who, like yourselves and ourselves, the things we go through. It's like sometimes it seems so unjust and unfair, but this that many people say things like that to you and go through it. It's just incredible.
I think that was a big part, Richard, of what a lot of people they were just in such disbelief. They're like, out of anybody they knew, they couldn't believe I was going through this. And they said, you've been through so much in the last few years. I mean, I, had to leave a 2,400 square foot home for a 24 square foot vehicle and hit the road. I took a cat on the road with me. That cat that was my heart and soul passed away. 2 months after that cat passed away, my mom passed away. And so on. And it just, and then everything was crashing and so on. And so in this whole journey, I had felt like that night I got hit, I was in so much shock, I didn't even know what to do at that point. And I'm not sure I can ever say I was at a point that I was so far into shock that, and disbelief of what had happened, I couldn't wrap my head around it in that moment. And I had no place to go. I didn't know anybody. I don't have relatives out here. I don't have friends out here. I just got here. I don't really know the area that well. I knew I would be safe here, but all these things. And my last set of resources, my tools for living, have basically been taken away from me at this point. And I get these visions along the way, and I had told friends of mine a while back, I said, okay, I'm not being shown any visions for this period of time, and that worries me, because the last time I didn't get visions, I ended up living in my vehicle in -30, -40. How could it be worse than that? And I thought to myself, I kept saying, nope, it's going to get better, it's going to get better, and these things kept happening along the way. So I spent the night in my vehicle with the air coming in, trying to do the best I could that night, because at that point I couldn't see the ability to get a hotel room. My credit cards were all maxed out, trying to pay dental bills, trying to live, trying to survive up to that point. So I only had probably $300 or $400 to my name to work with. And that wasn't going to go very far.
No.
When you're talking hotel rooms that are, $100 a night in the area. There people say, well, go to a shelter, go to this. And I think these are all nice concepts. And I'm going to see if we can turn some lights on and get any better lighting around here. They have these concepts that, well, you just go to shelter. But, what they don't realize is, one, if you've got a full-time job, a lot of shelters won't take you. Two, you have to fill out tons of paperwork to become eligible for this, and then you go on a waiting list, and it could be 4 or 5 months before something opens up for you. Easily, or longer. Because you're not the top priority if you've got a full-time job.
Yeah.
No.
So, in the meantime, then the aches and the pains and the stuff start to come up. Well, in the midst of injuries starting to surface, and there were neck injuries and shoulder injuries and back injuries and hip injuries and things that I'm still having checked out at this point, I couldn't go straight into a doctor because a lot of my stuff had not gotten transferred over. So I couldn't prove that I had any medical coverage at the time. So if I went into a doctor, I had no coverage, and it would be all out of pocket, and I had no way to pay for that.
Yeah.
So, everybody's like, go to a doctor, go to a doctor. Well, I couldn't go to a doctor, so I couldn't get any assistance for my injuries. And I thought to myself, I've had, tons of concussions in my life. I'll get past this. I'll get past it. I always get past it. And come the second night, the third night, it's, I had to get checked into a hotel. So I start this process of, I'm just floating things, basically, financially. I get in the hotel, I take it for 2 or 3 nights, then a paycheck gets in, I pay anything I can, try to get a couple of more nights, and I'm just constantly scrambling for where I'm going to be next. How can I keep some sort of shelter? And I hit a point that I couldn't do it. I only got a few days here or there. And I tried to make it in the front of my car. Well, just when I thought, okay, things will get better, basically the heat goes out on my vehicle, so I have no way to provide any heat really in my vehicle.
Mm.
And I'm just shaking my head. I'm like, I don't know what all this is leading to, because probably the only way I'm getting through this is because I'm coded here. And I could tell a lot of people cared, but they didn't know how to help.
Mm.
There were a lot of people that couldn't help financially, but they also didn't know how to help. And after I spent, I think there were 2 nights, 3 nights, that I ended up saying, well, I can't make it in my car right now, regardless of the blankets I had. And I had gotten special bedding before coming into Maine to be able to endure the cold winters, all organic, breathable, incredible stuff to use. And I couldn't stay warm because now the heater wasn't working in my vehicle. So that now then pushed me to spending the night in convenience stores. So now I'm operating on maybe less than 2 hours of sleep. I'm dozing off and on in a convenience store, trying to survive. And I had been out to this one convenience store one night, and I remember I was only about 10-minute drive from where I had to get to work. And I started driving to work, and I started getting frostbite. And I'm just sitting there in disbelief, like, this just can't be happening. it can't be. And there was no words to describe. I had started a process through my work to get a grant for assistance, and that was being drug out. They wanted all these financial statements. I couldn't access financial statements, so I'm trying to get into a storage unit. Meanwhile, the insurance company, the car insurance company, is saying, well, just go get the medical treatment you need because you have X amount of dollars to use. But I couldn't really do that because I needed anything that I did medically to count towards my deductible so that I wouldn't get stuck with these high medical bills. So I had to keep putting off the treatments, and they kept asking for more and more things to try to provide me with this grant, and they kept putting all this stuff off. Well, in the process of that, I found out that they didn't transfer my tax base from the state of Indiana over to the state of Maine. So now I'm dealing with tax stuff on top of all the trauma, the shock, and everything else that's going on, trying to straighten that out. And it's just coming down harder and harder. We're in one of the busiest seasons at work. I'm working overtime just to try to manage every little piece I can to get anything I can. So I'm working approximately, at that point, 70-hour weeks. And I'm bouncing in and out a little bit of a hotel room, a night here, a night there, wherever I could get one. And but it was when I got that frostbite after spending the nights in the convenience store, and I just broke down. I managed to get a hotel room for a night, 2 nights, and that's when I cut that video. And it was like, you can be the best person, you can do all the right things, and sometimes it's just not enough. Sometimes it's just not enough. And I think that is the one that Jared saw, that I had tears pouring down my face. So I had this huge breakdown in this process, and then I gradually, from that original video, I just put a plea out there, and I said, I don't know what else to do but to ask people to send money. And I'm in a dire state. I'm in a desperate state. And people that know me know I wouldn't ask unless I needed it. And I started getting some help. People contributed to my GoFundMe campaign to get me some funds. And that is what allowed me to start surviving. It started to give me a little more here or there, and then I was able to actually get a place for several days at a much lower rate. It was farther out, but it was at a much lower rate, and that's where I shared that story. I was staying in a place that the proceeds that go from the cost to stay there go towards autistic housing. And so it goes into providing housing for autistic people as they're moving into adulthood and they're challenged by the world. And so I'm always looking for those things where providing a need or meeting a need in my life also helps somebody. Yeah. And gradually it came through. I had a little piece that was coming through from a family member, my sister. At the time, there were complications in getting that money, and then once I got that money and I opened a local account, I had to wait a couple of weeks before that money became available. Well, when you're now dealing with storms coming in back to back, and you're dealing with, still no real contacts coming up offering you a place to be, and you are living so day by day. I mean, you're just so in the present moment at that time because you can't think to the next day or 5 days out. You're just trying to survive that moment. And, I couldn't believe, okay, I've got this money and now I've got to wait another 2 weeks before I can access it. In the meantime, I still hadn't heard from the grant through my work. It was just an ongoing thing, and I was continuing to have to put that plea out there, which was a hard thing, very hard thing for me to ask.
Definitely.
And I think it is for a lot of people. And so it's been a long journey in this process, and then realizing that the physical side of myself, it had to have certain things. I had to be where I could soak in a bathtub. I had to be where I had certain things, and I was having a lot of memory issues, and I was having issues talking, and I was having issues losing my train of thought in the middle of a sentence. I was in a lot of pain, and I'm still, again, working through those things at this point, but it stretches you in a way I don't think you can imagine completely until you go through it.
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not.
No.
I don't think any of us could appreciate what it is like. Like, I've been through some really rough times in my life, but nothing ever like that.
Yeah, I know the point where you get to where you feel like everything is against you, and you feel like you can't see what tomorrow will bring because you don't want to look at it.
Yeah.
Because it's just another day of doom. Have you felt through this that even though you went through it, and it is a thing to go through, it is, it seems so unfair, but do you ever think there was a point where something was helping you through it, or how can I put it, like guiding you through it, or there was something there, in the background making you feel like you would get through it?
One thing that I really came to conclusion with is no matter how hard or how challenging something is, we will get through it. We may not like it. It may be a rough ride. Whether we live or die through it, we're going to get through it. And I think that comes back to Orly. She has been guiding me all the way through this process endlessly. And just when I would hit the harshest points and I was breaking down and in my car crying because here I had cash to spend on a hotel room and not one hotel room would take my cash and give me a room to stay in these dire situations. And I was falling through every crack because I either didn't have enough or I had too much. And I didn't meet the guidelines for anything. And one of the things Orly does is hearts will start appearing. So, little hearts will start appearing in front of me when she's present. Feathers start appearing in front of me when she's present. And it was hard because for a while in there, because the vehicle that got hit was the vehicle we traveled in together. There were so many memories attached to it and so many personal breakthroughs and journeys and things like that with that vehicle. And so when it was gone, at first I felt this huge disconnect, like, where is she? And I felt so lost because for the first time ever, I couldn't feel her there. And that scared me. But gradually, as I would hit these dark spots, there would be something that would show up that let me know she was around. And I think that has been a big key in my life, is that even in those darkest spots, if you're willing to just open your eyes and notice it for a minute, it will be right there in your path somehow, whether that shows up because it's a heart-shaped stone in the walkway, or the cloud becomes a heart, or whatever it is that is your connection. And I'm still coming out of the fatigue and the exhaustion and everything from this experience. I'm still dealing with things. I did finally get a grant through my work, which came at the perfect time, actually, which was very interesting because once I said, okay, I can't wait for a lawyer to get back to me, this or that, even though it would be a really clear-cut case, all of these things, I said, I need to just move on. I need to get into something. I don't have these resources to keep going, so I've got to get moving. got myself into a new vehicle, which at one point I didn't think there'd be a way I'd get it because of the way my credit cards were being used to survive. It had lowered my credit score so far that I wasn't sure I could get approved for anything. Well, I did get approved. $125 a month more than what I was paying on the vehicle, which was really hard to swallow. And then there were all these challenges getting the vehicle in because they don't carry my type of vehicle in Maine. So they had to bring it in from another part of the country. And then they couldn't get anybody to go out and get the vehicle. So they ended up having to have it shipped over. And I'm all the way through this process holding to some very key components. And that was integrity and walking in alignment with my codes. And so I only accepted a vehicle that was coded to me. I had an offer for a place to stay at one point, and I walked away from it, even though I knew it meant I was probably going to be back in my vehicle, because the person was trying to control and manipulate me and work with me in a way that was not treating me with respect. And I think that's very hard when you're in a situation like this, because it's so easy to feel like I've got to take whatever is offered me. But the offers that were being made to me were not beneficial. It was maybe a place that was filled with smoke, and I can't handle smoke. It was somebody who was mistreating me or not treating me with respect. And I walked away from that situation. But I found that every single time I held to my integrity, every single time that I had enough respect for myself, and that I walked away from anything that did not function in integrity, I was provided with something, and something better.
That was so powerful, what you said there. To be in a situation like that, where you are literally up against it, and to actually say, I still have a choice. I don't have to choose to be in a place or be in a situation. You know, there's people who haven't gone through, myself included in this, by the way, there's people who haven't gone through half what you went through in the last few months, Jesse, and to actually still say, I have a choice. I can actually still get, I need to walk within my own integrity. I'm not having anything, I'm not just settling for anything. That's something that's really, really powerful. And I think that I just want to take a second to sort of honour that and say that, because that's I can't put it into words, but there's a really powerful message in that.
Yeah. It's exactly what I wanted these interviews to be about. It's about, like you said, you kept your integrity and you stayed on your path, and you got through it because you believed in something. That was what you believed in, and that's what guided you through it. It's
yes.
It's I know it's hard to put into words, Jan.
It's quite something. It's definitely quite something.
It is a challenge, because I think in a situation like that, you are so worn down and so beaten down, and all of societal programming tells you need to take what you're being given and you should be grateful for that. But sometimes that's not what you need. And when you've lost everything, and I've lost everything in my life more than once, there's probably the most extreme set of circumstances in doing that. It's up to you to hold your integrity. And it's so easy to be treated as somebody who isn't valued or cared about, or whatever terminology you want to use in that. Your respect, the non-tangibles are what you still have. And if you stop treating yourself with respect and integrity and stop honoring that, everybody else will stop as well.
How would you feel if you come across someone who'd been through something very similar to yourself, or was going through something very similar to yourself?
Again, I think it's so easy for us to think, well, this person created this. You know, they brought this on themselves in some way, or they're not doing what they can for themselves. But as long as somebody's trying to help themselves, I'm willing to help them any way I can. And even though, for example, I had a connection that I know, and her son and their family was completely uprooted by a fire, lost everything. They got out with their lives, but basically lost everything in that fire. And it was a place that they were renting to own. So they went through a very similar thing, you know, very sudden, very traumatic, very, the young kids involved, pets involved.
Life altering.
And so I didn't have a lot to give, but I knew that, you know, even $25 or $30, which is huge for me right now, that it would help maybe generate some other people to give as well. And that when enough people give, sometimes we think we can't do enough, but even that $5 or $10, by the time enough people do $5 or $10, you know, for me, that made a difference in shelter for a night or 2 nights, as the case may be. So, you know, definitely it is that key of looking at it and say, well, where are these people at and what are they doing? And, you know, certainly there are people that have the resources to rebuild, and there are people that don't. And I think more and more there are people out there like me who are falling through the cracks of the system. They can't get the assistance. And when, you know, this is one of the things I thought about bringing up with my work. When somebody's in trauma and they're going through this, and now you're asking them all of these 10,000 questions about their financial statements, which they may or may not even have access to, and you're drawing this process out over 2 months or something before you're going to give them any help, that's not helping them, because they need help right then. They need a place to go in that moment.
Yeah.
So I think that that's the huge thing. And of course, the gift has to come as a gift and not because somebody feels just obligated to do it. But the rewards for everybody, I mean, it's not just about helping that other person, it's about helping yourself, because we're all one in the end. And they're not different from us. They are us.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Good
Very
answer.
much so.
Good answer. The other question I had in mind, what do you see for yourself moving forward? I mean, where do you see yourself? What do you want to sort of be, or what do you want to do, or what do you want to achieve, basically?
I've been doing a lot of...
I know that's a big question.
I have been doing some pondering on this, and I think I haven't had time to process some of the mental and emotional things yet related to this. As I started to say before, I did receive the funding from my work. Now, ordinarily, they would pay, for example, a hotel directly. Well, there was an interesting little faux pas in that, and they sent it to the wrong location. So I didn't get the money, and my managers are trying to follow up on some things. And I'm like, this is really pretty humorous at this point, because it's like, this is just one more unbelievable piece in this whole story. And yet, as a result of that happening, they had to wire transfer me money. Well, great. So they finally said, okay, we wire transferred you this money after one of the people followed up on it for me after 2 months of this application being in. I think actually even longer than that. And so then they finally get the wire transfer to me. It was almost about 3 weeks ago, 3.5 weeks ago. And I go to places, and I'm going all around town. I tried 3 places, and none of them could give me the money from the wire transfer. 2 of them, the machines were down. The one place that had the machine down didn't have enough money to give me. So they're like, well, try this area, try that area. I'm like, I'm not driving all over the state of Maine to try to get this money. So finally somebody called and they found a location that could help me out. I made it there like 30 minutes before they closed, picked up the money in cash, and as a result of being able to do that, instead of having about a week and a half time to regroup, I was able to find a place for a month, which allowed me to actually put everything in, sort through it, go through it. And just recently I put up a short little video on a furniture piece that I built for the new van. So I've actually got the new van now. I've built a furniture piece to make it more functional in the vehicle now. And just today I was putting most of my things back in there because I only have one more week in this space to work through some stuff. I started seeking medical care. And when I went into the ER, because I couldn't get an appointment with a doctor for another 4 or 5 months. So I'm like, I've been in an accident. I'm having some really serious neurological things happen. And I don't know if there's any brain damage right now, but it would be really good if I could see a doctor. Well, I'm sorry, you can't see a doctor until May or June. Well, that's not going to work well for me. I'm thinking to myself,
absolutely not, no.
It's like, yeah, just wait another 6 months when you're in trauma and everything else. So I ended up walking into the ER saying, I need to see a doctor. I need to have some x-rays done because I finally got my health insurance squared away where I could do that. And, and then that's been a whole process. And so now they're saying, well, there's this spinal injury and there's some things. So I've been holding to my best to just keep doing the things I can do, calling on some friends who do holistic healing that have stepped forward to help me during this time. Very dear friend of mine, Lorraine Cohen, she does some phenomenal healing work. And I called her at the scene of the accident right when it happened saying, I need help now. And she did help me.
It's a shame you can't meet there with Sam, Jared Sam, because she is a phenomenal healer. And I got nerve damage, really severe, quite severe, and she practically fixed mine.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's worth it really is worth getting some healing on it because it can be extraordinary.
Well, she definitely, her work saw me through, but I felt like I still needed to know the medical side of what was happening, so I had a better grasp of where to focus energy and what was happening. There's still some MRIs and things that need to be done, but piece by piece I'm getting there. And so now I'm at a point in about another week, I'm going to be back in the vehicle. Hopefully not in a situation of getting hit anymore. I'm going to continue to stay with my codes, continue to stay in the space of integrity along the way. And I think that there's just so many pieces out there in these processes. And these are things that it's not always about the fact that you're a bad person or you've done something wrong or this is karma coming back on you. You can put everything in place for yourself, but you can't choose for somebody else. And you're not responsible for somebody else's bad decisions. Unfortunately, sometimes somebody makes a poor decision or an unwise choice along the way, and it affects your life. And we can't always be prepared for that. I think going forward, certainly I'm going to stay open, and I know it's something I was thinking about prior to the accident of making as much of my work by donation basis, whatever somebody can afford or wishes to pay, trying to do that for them, trying to create events that allow people to just come and be in a state of peace and safety and let go for a little while. Because even when we have shelter and even when we have certain pieces of stability in our life, those turbulences, there's nothing that can replace that place of safety or peace. And so many people have said, watching me go through this experience, watching me take each step along the way and sharing that with people has been a huge inspiration for them. I think all I can do is continue to be the inspiration. We can't give what we don't have, but we can stand in our true self. We can stand in love. We can stand in light. We can do that. And it's not easy because there are times we feel broken. But we have to remember and I know for myself going forward, I have to remember to ask when I need it. Ask for what I need, because people don't know what to give until you ask for it. And they don't know how to help until you tell them the help that you need. But I think definitely being that voice, and I hope that I can share this story more. I hope that this launches maybe some speaking engagements to get out there and share with people and awaken people a little bit. And like I said, maybe some events that just offer up that peacefulness in what can feel like a really chaotic world sometimes, and not have them feel that pressure of everything's got a price tag. If you need to come and experience this, then come and experience that. And it doesn't matter whether you're paying for it or not. I don't want somebody to feel like they could only do something because they're paying for it.
If you could say something to that person in 2015 that version of you in 2015 that's going to go through this sort of transformation that you've been through now, what would you say to that person?
I would be telling them, one, you're going to make it through whatever life throws at you. There's always an opening. And two, don't ever let anybody treat you as less than. Know your value, know your worth, and that doesn't have a price on it. Hold your integrity no matter what.
I think we got the title of the video there. That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Well, for me, Jess, I mean, all the things you went through are heart-wrenching, right? But every little message you give after what you've just said you've been through was exactly what I was looking for in these videos. I think it will give someone, I think there's someone who will watch this and they will take exactly what they need from it, and they'll have hope, and it'll give them faith.
And I think if anybody is in question, is they operating with integrity with me? Are they operating in truth? Are they operating, is this situation holding divine presence to it? What I can say is that there won't be lies where there's divine presence or God presence. They will not treat you as less than. They will not insist that you take what isn't good for you. And sometimes you've still got to stand that ground. And the people that operate with integrity will not be all about the money in anything. They're going to care about you first and worry about the rest of it later. The place that I'm in now, part of why I came into this place was because of the amount of integrity. And when I arrived, the person that has this place has a beautiful shop, garden shop here, and you can tell she's a very gentle soul in many ways. And she said, I can see you have been through trauma. And she says, I've been through trauma. And I knew right there that that was it. And I knew in her approach, because there was a little bit of misunderstanding with the money or something not functioning right in the system when I was working to get payment to her. And she worked with me. And that's the difference. When somebody's all about the money, they won't work with you.
Yeah.
And they did continue to demand the sacrifices. But when they're not, they'll find a way to work with you. And so just stay in those situations. And I know I've come back to that point a couple of times, but I think it's been one of the biggest pieces in all of this for me is to stand in that. And I really hope it inspires more people to stand in that integrity, because that's where your whole self is. That's where your truth is. And when you're having to face the big stuff in life like this, you've got to have your whole self.
I would like very much to know a bit more about the code connecting, but I think we should save that for another time. So
yeah, that's me too.
would you be willing maybe to do a second interview, maybe in couple of weeks' time, when this one's gone out, about the code connecting? Maybe give us a little bit of a demonstration or a little bit of a talk about it. Would you be interested in doing that, Jesse?
I would love to.
So what if are there websites or social media that people can take a look at your work and follow your work on?
Yeah, definitely. You have Facebook, LinkedIn, and then my website is compassioncodes.com.
Compassioncodes.com. And it's Jesse An Nicols George on Facebook, is that right?
Jesse An Nicols George. Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. Well, we'll make sure to put the links in the description below. And guys, it'd be very interesting for you guys watching to leave your comments. Have you been through experiences that you've found transformative and had to it's changed your outlook on? Like, we'd love to hear from you. Jesse, it's been absolutely fantastic to have you with us this evening.
Yes.
And thank you so much for taking the time out to chat with us. It's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you very, very much indeed.
Well, thank you to both of you, because it's been a pleasure to be here, and I just really appreciate this opportunity to share this story with people, and I hope it does touch some lives, and I hope it does definitely help some people that are in their own journeys.
Yeah, we appreciate it as well, Jess, and I believe wholeheartedly in my heart it absolutely will inspire